the first thing you can recall about yourself when asked? Perhaps you might start with your name, your age, or where you live. It might be a little harder to recall other things that you're not familiar with daily, such as arithmetic formulas or old recipes. Regardless, both situations rely on our ability to memorize things. Our memory is one of the most crucial aspects of our cognitive function. Without it, we would be unable to function effectively in our daily lives, remember key information, or learn new things. Understanding how our brains work allows us to research many cognitive diseases, leading to better treatments and advancements in neurological sciences. So, what if our memories just stopped working? What if we could no longer recall even the simplest of details? The answer lies in the understanding the structure and function of our brain. One scientist, in particular, uncovered crucial insights about how our brain stores and processes memories, transforming our understanding of cognitive function. Her research on the prefrontal cortex, an area of the brain once considered too complex to study, paved the way for treatments that have changed the lives of people suffering from neurological diseases. Patricia Goldman-Rakic was a pioneering neuroscientist whose contributions have had a lasting impact on both the field of neuroscience and on improving the quality of life for countless individuals. This is the untold story of her work, the challenges she overcame, and why her legacy should never be forgotten. Born on April 22, 1937, in Salem, Massachusetts, to a Jewish family, Patricia was the daughter of Irvin Schiller and Jeannie Pearl. Her mother was an immigrant from what is now Ukraine, and her father was the son of Latvian immigrants. Although her parents didn't receive any formal education, they encouraged their daughter to excel. In an era when women were expected to become housewives, all three daughters ended up earning PhDs in science from major universities. From an early age, her curiosity about the natural world was evident, as she often spent hours engrossed in science books, dreaming of making her own discoveries. She had many talents. She was an excellent artist and played both the piano and violin very well. Her sister Ruth believed that Patricia's dexterity and steady hand had carried over into her scientific work. She studied psychology in Vassar College and graduated in 1959 with a bachelor's in neurobiology. Then she went to UCLA to get her PhD in developmental psychology. Her research at college began to make her interested in the connections between behavior and the brain. Eventually, her research had led her to becoming the chief of developmental neurobiology at the National Institute of Mental Health from 1965 to 1979. During this time, she conducted some of her most influential studies, establishing herself as a leading figure in the field of cognitive neuroscience. Patricia Goldman-Rakic's groundbreaking research on the prefrontal cortex transformed how we understand memory, behavior, and mental illness. Trained as a psychologist, she became one of the most sophisticated and innovative neuroscientists of the modern era. Before her work, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher cognitive functions like decision-making and memory, was thought to be too complex to study scientifically. But Goldman-Rakic changed that forever. Her research focused on working memory, which is how we hold and use information in real time, like remembering a phone number just long enough to dial it. She pioneered the use of radioactive trackers, electrophysiology, and anatomical mapping to study how the prefrontal cortex processes information. She was one of the first scientists to use non-human primates to model the human brain. Her most famous experiment, the delayed response task, showed that monkeys with damage to this area had severe memory deficits. Goldman-Rakic would show an animal a bit of food and then hide the food in one of two containers. Then, for a varying period, she would prevent the animal from seeing the containers. Once the animal could see the containers again, she would note whether it would look at the container that contained the hidden food. Can it remember where it was hidden? Goldman-Rakic discovered that damage to the prefrontal cortex significantly impaired this ability, the first clear evidence that the prefrontal cortex played a role in short-term memory. She also made another important discovery. If an injury to the frontal cortex occurs in early life, the working memory can recover. But injuries after adolescence have a much more severe impact. Before her work, scientists mainly focused on early life brain plasticity. However, Goldman-Rakic showed that recovery had limits, reshaping how we understand brain injuries. As she continued her work, she became interested in how the brain is organized. Previous Nobel Prize-winning work by David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel had already confirmed that the part of the brain responsible for vision was arranged in functional columns for sensory processing. However, Goldman-Rakic discovered that the prefrontal cortex is arranged the same way. Her research showed that the information in the brain moves along parallel pathways, moving across the cortex and through a deeper structure like the basal ganglia. This discovery, published in 1980, helped deepen the understanding of how thoughts and actions are coordinated. Later, in the 1980s and 1990s, she wanted to understand how memory works in real time. To do this, she ran an experiment where monkeys had to remember the location on a screen and look at it later. She found something fascinating. Some brain cells activated when the monkey first saw the location, others stayed active while the monkey was remembering it, and another group fired only when the monkey responded. This was a huge discovery as it showed that memory isn't just stored in one place. Different brain cells handle different steps, each handling a unique part of the memory process. She even theorized that these regions contained memory fields, just like the visual cortex had receptive fields. Her research had found profound impacts on the study of neuropsychiatric disorders. She was the first to show that dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and movement, is crucial for the prefrontal cortex function. She found that dopamine depletion in this region led to memory deficits, such as schizophrenia and Parkinson's disease. This study changed the view of neuropsychiatry and helped provide a rational basis for understanding the symptoms and mental illness and paving the way for new treatments for schizophrenia, ADHD, and Alzheimer's disease. For over 3 decades, she worked with her husband, Patricia Goldman-Rakic, at Yale, where she was a professor in 4 different fields: neurobiology, psychiatry, neurology, and physiology. In recognition of her contributions, several awards are now given in her name, including the Goldman-Rakic Prize for Outstanding Achievement in Cognitive Neuroscience, created and awarded to honor scientists for advancing the studies of the cognitive brain.
She was motivated by curiosity. She wanted to know how human brain works, but also was motivated that this understanding could help to alleviate suffering, which is so compelling in human mental disorders.
Patricia Goldman-Rakic's groundbreaking discoveries changed how we understand the brain, but her work is still not widely recognized. Despite her important contributions, her findings aren't often taught in many medical schools, even though they are directly relevant to some serious cognitive disorders such as schizophrenia. Thus, many psychiatrists are still unaware of her work and the role of the brain in the disorders they treat. Why is this the case? Part of the answer lies in the systematic barriers she faced as a woman in science. In a world where only men were seen as scientists, Patricia Goldman-Rakic had to break through the ceilings made not just of glass, but concrete. Although her life was marked by extraordinarily professional achievements, she had to face the everyday challenges of being a woman in science during a predominantly male-dominated era. At the time, women were expected to support men's careers, not lead their own. Pregnancy often meant the end of a career, forcing women to choose between family and their profession. For Goldman-Rakic, she was expected to be the bride of science, meaning she had devoted entirely to her work to prove she was serious. Ideas she pioneered were often stolen, and she was powerless to stop it. At Yale, she wasn't even given her own lab space, despite her groundbreaking work at the National Institute of Mental Health. Her contributions were dismissed, and her presence questioned. Though she once told a friend she was unsure if she would be able to make it in a man's world, she more than proved that she could. Her hard work and resilience paid off in 1975 when she was finally promoted to the tenure track at the National Institute of Mental Health. A full 8 years after she had joined the program, despite working in a male-dominated environment, she made lasting contributions that changed the landscape of neuroscience. More than just a scientist, Goldman-Rakic worked tirelessly through her professional life as a mentor to female graduate students and her young faculty. Her lab became a pipeline for future leaders in neuroscience, women who would go to transform the field themselves. She fought not just for science, but for the world where women could belong. At the time of her death, more than 50% of all neuroscience PhDs worldwide were women. Overall, Patricia Goldman-Rakic's contributions to neuroscience have helped us understand the brain, especially the relationship between the prefrontal cortex and the working memory. Her research advanced the scientific community's knowledge and provided important insights into cognitive disorders, allowing for the improvement of treatments and therapies. Despite facing significant barriers as a woman in science, a male-dominated field, she persisted and even worked to fight so women could belong. Her contributions and legacy still influence the field of neuroscience today. As we progress in our understanding of the human brain, it's important to honor and remember trailblazers like Goldman-Rakic who have paved the way for future generations.